Hi, this is Jessie Silverman here from Big Blue Canopy, the speech language pathologist here, and I wanted to go over some different language activities and strategies that you can work on to build those expressive and receptive language skills for early intervention ages. So ages, basically 0 to 3 years of age. So just to go over some quick milestones with you. By 1 year of age, you want your children or your child to start saying some single words. So like 2 to 5 single words, like oftentimes words like mama, dada, up, go. Some of those are early ones to develop. And then by 18 months of age, you want them to roughly have, and I'm going to say roughly because a lot of times these milestones, they change each year. But you want them roughly to have about like 20 to 30 words that they're using. And by 18 months, so 1.5, you want them to start combining 2-word phrases. So more please, bye mama. So starting to put together those 2-word phrases instead of just using single words. And then by 2 years of age, you want them to roughly have about like 50 words in their vocabulary and starting to combine using those 2-word phrases and starting to combine some even 3-word phrases. So like, I want more, or go down, please. And then by 2.5, you want them to build their vocabulary, have roughly between like 100 to 200 words, and then combining using mostly phrases at that age to communicate. So not using just single words, using mostly phrases. Some of those building into like sentences. And then by 3 years of age, you want them to be using longer sentences, so like 3 to 4 words in length. You want them to start asking basic questions like, what is that? Where did it go? And you want them to have roughly about like a vocabulary of like 450, 500 words. And you want them to have somewhat of intelligible production, so have about, where you can understand about 75% of what they are saying. So tips for building on those language skills if you are having some trouble or if your child is somewhat delayed or not meeting those milestones. So if your child is not talking yet verbally or putting together words, a lot of times I will introduce some basic baby signs just to complement that language that isn't there yet, and it will help alleviate some of that frustration. So one that I like to use for requesting is more, where you bring your hands together like this, or please, you do like a circular motion on your chest. And then open is one that I use a lot too. It works really well with like toys that are in boxes or bubbles. Help is one where you kind of lift your thumb up. That's a good one to work on too. And then to terminate activities when they're finished or they want to stop what they're doing, all done or all done. So a lot of times I will introduce those baby signs when they're not producing the single words yet. And oftentimes when I'm using those signs, I'll complement the language by doing like a exaggerated like initial sound like more or done or open, and that'll help them pair the verbalization with the sign, so they're not just, when I bring my hands together she gives me something. So pushing them further to start pairing that verbalization with the sign as well. You can also, if your child is not verbalizing words yet, present pictures. That'll help alleviate some of the frustration as well. So like, do you want more, or are you all done? Or do you want to eat or drink? That'll help sometimes too if they're having trouble verbalizing or producing verbal approximations for the words, and it'll alleviate some of that frustration. If they are at a stage where they can produce those single words, I'll model those during play, and I like to hold desired activities, like say for instance we were doing bubbles. I like to hold them in close proximity to my mouth, like, oh, do you want bubbles? Ba, ba, ba. So they can see what my articulators, what my mouth and muscles are doing. Or, oh, should we open? Open. You try it. Open. Can you make your mouth look like Miss Jessie's? So a lot of times I'll like to hold those items close to my mouth. And if they're even just giving you an isolated sound, reward that. Like even if they just do, oh, you told me bubbles, and then go back and model the correct production. Bubbles. Good job telling me. So a lot of times I'll build on single words that way. And then I also tell parents to do as much like language narrative play during activities. So like, for instance, if we were doing the farm, you just kind of like talk about what you're doing, just to give them that increased language exposure. Like, oh, there's the pig. The pig's gonna go in the barn. Let's open the gate. Bye-bye, pig. And I tell parents also to the power of three. If there's new vocabulary or new language concepts, giving them repeated exposure like 3 times. Like, okay, here's the pig. The pig is pink. I like the pig. Do you like the pig? Just so they can get that repeated exposure to the language. When they're moving from single words to phrases, a lot of times I like to kind of tap out. Like if they're just saying pig, like, oh, let's say hi, pig. Ready? And I'll take their hand. Hi, pig. Or sometimes those airflow sounds, like for instance, the H in high or like hot, I'll kind of bring their hand up to, well, I tell parents to do it right now because right now I'm wearing a mask or a face shield, so I can't do it. But I'll tell parents to bring their hands up to their mouth and do hi, so they can feel those airflow sounds. So that can be a good strategy as well to get some of those H's, like for hi, help, hot. That's a good activity to work on too. And some of my favorite activities, like I said, bubbles are very good. Those words that have the NP and B sounds are early developing sounds. So those words are easier for little kiddos to imitate. So a lot of words that I use often, like more or bubbles or pop, 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 open, up, 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 down. These are an early sound too for them to imitate. So bubbles are a good language activity to work on those single words and then moving into the 2 and 3 word phrases. I love Mr. Potato Head too. It is very good for the receptive identification of body parts, but also to work on that requesting, like doing just single words like, oh, do you want eyes? Tell me eyes. And then if you're working on 2 words like eyes on or eyes please, or if you're moving into the 3 words, I want eyes or put on eyes. So this is one of my favorite activities too. And like I said, receptively you can work on, oh, I want you to find some things for me. Can you find her nose? And working on, even if they're not doing it themselves, doing hand over hand, there's their nose. Now let's find your nose, 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 and giving them that repeated exposure to the language. Some receptive activities that are good to work on with your little kiddos. So I like to work on increasing that vocabulary by doing like some receptive identification. And picture cards are great, but there's also like those 100 word books where there's different picture scenes of like things you use in the bath or colors or animals or vehicles. But I a lot of times will just use my picture cards and have them work on just identifying an object, giving them like a field of like 2 pictures. So like, oh, can you find, where's the hat? Can you find the hat? We wear the hat. And I try to also tell them about the object as well, just to give them that increased language exposure as well. And once they can identify just the named objects, you could even push it a step further and work on like object function or categories. Like, oh, which one do we wear? Or which one is food? And work on them doing the receptive identification based on like the function or category as well. With the little kids as well, I like working on action identification. So like, once again, presenting like 2 pictures. Find the one that's swimming, or find the kids who are swimming. Who's swimming? Can you find swimming? And having them go over, oh, you're right, they are swimming. Just so they can understand some of those verbs and those ing verbs with those present progressive verbs. And we also like to work on following directions. So a lot of times when your children are within the same range, they can follow routine commands really well, like come here, sit down, give that to me. So we'll build on those 1-step directions once they can follow those really well, and even embed like some basic early spatial concepts. like in versus out, like put the pig in the barn. Okay, now take the pig out. Good job. All right, now we're gonna put on the barn. Take off. So like in versus out, on versus off. Once they can follow some simple one-step commands, you can even start embedding some of those early spatial concepts. Once they can follow the one-step commands, you can push it a step further and work on some two-step commands, like first, then directions, like first. Okay, ready? And a lot of times I'll just present like two pieces. So first we're gonna put on the eyes, then we're gonna put on the nose. And if they're kind of just grabbing from this hand every time, like a lot of times I'll present, oh, listen again. First eyes, then nose. And I'll even kind of hold the second step back so they can see like the delay in it. Like, oh, first we're gonna put this on, then we're gonna put this on. So that's a lot of times how I teach those concepts first and then when they're following two-step directions in a sequence. So hopefully this information helps with introducing some of those early language skills and building on their vocabulary with your little kiddos when it comes to early intervention strategies. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@bigbluecanopy.com. Thanks for listening. Bye.